Right back at it live for hour number 2, right here on the early line on a Wednesday morning, early April. My goodness, I know it's April showers bring May flowers, and that's really what's happening here in the Northeast. So hopefully some of that weather can calm down. But we got a lot of hot topics to hit here in hour number 2. Now, Joe, let me bring you in and talk about this for a quick moment, because it seems like the city of brotherly love, big on the sports landscape right now. Why? Joel Embiid came back last night. What does that mean for the Sixers heading down the stretch? Bryce Harper, 3 home runs, including a grand slam last night. But maybe the biggest event of all coming up this weekend. The WWE is in town for WrestleMania. Now, let me get this straight. Like, WrestleMania, it's wrestling, it's outdoors. Like, if it's like 55, 60 degrees, and I don't even know if it's supposed to rain this weekend in Philadelphia, it's at Lincoln Financial Field. Doesn't seem like the best environment to put yourself in. Why not just go south? Why not just have them like Tampa or Miami every year at this time of the year?
Because it doesn't matter. That you won't be able to get a seat in that place. I am sure Kevin Walsh has already taken up and bought an entire section for him and his friends there that'll be going to this. Yeah, they know rain, sleet, snow, it won't matter, Donnie. That place is going to be wall-to-wall people to catch it.
Exactly. I know Kevin, the biggest WWE fan on this network, Kevin Walsh by far, absolutely loves it. Roman Reigns, his favorite wrestler. So give him a shout out when you get a chance here on social media. But let's move over to the National Football League with a lot of big doings going on. Look, we're in a little bit of a lull right now. The free agency frenzy pretty much has died down. We're waiting on the NFL draft. And as we do that, we'll welcome in the radio audience. You're watching and listening live to the early line on a Wednesday morning edition. It's Donnie Rightside. It's Joe Ranieri, Sirius XM Channel 159, and all of our radio affiliates now in the building as we talk Clyde Edwards-Helaire back on a 1-year deal for Kansas City, who has shown, hey, look, we'll draft a guy late in Pacheco. We'll draft a guy early in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We'll share that backfield. Decent move for Kansas City here, bringing back Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, familiar. Obviously there's a comfort level there with Patrick Mahomes. They were never going to be a dominant, a featured back dominant offense with Patrick Mahomes. So listen, the running back market is what it is when you have one of the greatest here in Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. You probably want to stay and hang around if winning championships is what you want to do. And that's exactly what he wants to do here, Helaire, too, signing for a 1-year deal. It works for everybody. I think it's a win-win type of situation. And we mentioned it, yesterday, right? It's a win-win for Carson Wentz as well, signing on here. You don't have to worry about doing a whole lot except holding on to a clipboard on the sideline there. So these kinds of signings make sense for the guys who are there now.
Maybe the biggest move of the offseason, Joe, that could tilt the balance of power in the NFL, Carson Wentz backing up Patrick Mahomes. If Mahomes goes down, come on, man, not even going to miss a beat with my guy Carson Wentz back there pulling the trigger. If we take a look at the Kansas City Chiefs odds on the 2024-2025 season, team win total, 11.5. You could probably pencil that in. You just tell me before the season, hey, Donnie, I don't care what happens on that team, but Patrick Mahomes is going to play the whole season. Cash that ticket for 11.5. Same thing, the division, minus 220. Good luck beating the Kansas City Chiefs. The conference, plus 350 price, and also the Super Bowl at a plus 650 price. Let me ask you this question here before we move on and take a look at a couple other options here in the NFL. Rashee Rice's situation. He's probably going to get suspended, and that's even if he's lucky at this point. The one thing we all agreed upon last year was like, you better get the Chiefs this year because they're going to get that wide receiver position figured out. Now, if Rashee Rice has any chance of being suspended next year on an already weak wide receiving core, that probably changes things in the draft and or maybe making a trade for a wide receiver now for the Kansas City Chiefs. What do you think on that situation?
He is cooperating with the Dallas police there, and the NFL says they're monitoring the situation as usual. But, it sounds as if he's in hot water here. So which isn't great for Kansas City. But if you're going to have something like this happen, now's the time to do it, right? You're a couple of weeks out from the draft. You can maneuver a few things to go out there and get some receivers. And don't forget, Donnie, we say it all the time. The wide receiver doesn't make the quarterback. The quarterback makes the wide receiver. So whoever will be catching passes from Patrick Mahomes will be just fine in place of Rashee Rice.
Just a wild scene overall, too, because we saw the video footage of the crash. Then later on, we saw people actually stopped on the highway outside their car with their phones, just filming the players, or should I say, at least Rashee Rice and his friends walking by like, oh, I guess you're just going to leave the accident right now, to the whole, you know what, couldn't find me for 24 hours, contacted look, we're cooperating with, you didn't cooperate at all, leaving the scene of the accident. So we'll see it play out. We'll see what the NFL does, because keep in mind, the NFL doesn't have to wait for actual remedies from the court system. They can advance their own pain on Rashee Rice if they feel the need to do so. So certainly something to keep an eye on. But another thing to keep an eye on, Iowa defensive back Cooper DeJean going into the NFL, finally healthy off that broken leg. Could he be a first-round pick here coming up in the draft shortly?
Maybe. It sounds like doesn't it sound like every forecast here for this draft has 10 quarterbacks going in the first round here? And how many quarterbacks are there, Donnie, coming into this class? I mean, we're talking about everyone seems to think that there's going to be this major run in the first round here on quarterbacks. Were there that many good quarterbacks that I missed here, Donnie?
I don't know. Cornerbacks running wild out there on the scene. It'll be interesting to see where he does go, because we always know that cornerbacks and quarterbacks always get drafted a little bit higher than they're supposed to because of the premium of the position, and you don't want to miss out, which brings us into J.J. McCarthy. During the college football season, we knew J.J. McCarthy is a good quarterback, but he's with Michigan. They don't ask him to do all that much, the consummate leader, and can he be a great pro? So usually we're saying, can he be that late first-round pick, and who would pick him? And then all of a sudden, once the season got over with, word got out that J.J. McCarthy is the new it quarterback in the draft, and could he actually slide all the way up to number 2? Now, it looks like that's probably not going to happen at this point. Is Drake May, by the way, the leader in the clubhouse, to be the number 2 overall quarterback taken off the board. But J.J. McCarthy to the Minnesota Vikings seems like a foregone conclusion. Plus 105 for him to go there. Another destination, the New England Patriots at a 4-to-1 price. The Commanders at a 5-to-1 price. Is it looking like the tea leaves are just pointing towards the Minnesota Vikings, and that's where he's going to wind up?
Listen, I think anything is possible with this kid. I absolutely think he's going somewhere there, maybe sooner than most people think here, because everything that we've heard about him, Donnie, is the kid is a winner. And in such a quarterback-starved league, anybody, if you are in need of a quarterback, this is exactly the kind of kid, experience, championship qualities, worked his way. This is a kid you're going to want in the locker room, and it's worth a risk, I think, with a first-round pick.
It's interesting to see where he goes, because you can sort of take that whole angle from Michigan and Tom Brady. Tom Brady didn't come into the NFL lighting the world on fire from college football, but it's that mentality, like, I can be a leader of men. I'll command that huddle. I'm a winner here, won a national championship. Trust me with your franchise. I can see that playing out in that direction. We'll see how high J.J. McCarthy goes in the draft coming up shortly. Let's focus on college basketball, people. It's the Final Four this weekend. Let's get you caught up with the latest next.
So I'm not sure Alabama is the team to knock them off from this second consecutive national championship chase. But what will be the key for the Crimson Tide if they can even cover a number?
That wing ball screen action, how you defend that is going to be a problem, because of Donovan Clingan, it forces you to change so much what you do defensively if he's able to score inside.
Only on SportsGrid.
Talk all you want about how fat he is. No one can guard him. No one can stop him. He's a violent offender. He does whatever he wants in the low block and at the 10. He just does whatever he wants and scores at will, ad nauseum.
They're the Mike Tyson of college basketball. At some point, they're going to throw a haymaker. And when it connects, Pharrell, you're not getting up.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York team has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Final Four action this weekend, both the women's and the men's tournament. Exciting times all the way around, but we are going to keep you updated on the latest odds here at the FanDuel Sportsbook on how you can get down on some certain wagers this weekend for the Final Four and, of course, Monday's championship game. Now, if we're looking for epic results, Joe Ranieri, in that game, we're probably hoping it's going to be Purdue versus UConn. But let's set the table for that. Winning the national championship at the FanDuel Sportsbook, Connecticut comes in as the favorite right now to minus 185 price. Purdue plus 190. Alabama at 13-1 price. And NC State at 20-1. So I'm going to ask you this question first. These numbers haven't shifted around all that much. But do you agree Connecticut should be the heavy favorite to cut down the nets and win the national championship?
Absolutely. I don't think there's a better team on that list there. And you may think you're going to get some value by trying to go against it. But again, value only works if that team can actually win the game, and they can't. So I do think that at 185 right now, and I think we said the look-ahead lines was, what, 5.5, I think, somewhere in that ballpark. If it is the number ones, Purdue versus UConn, I am fairly confident that one side will be UConn. I do think NC State will make it interesting here, but ultimately talent is going to win out, and UConn and Purdue have the most of it, and that's usually how it works when it comes to the March Madness and a national championship.
Now, you see UConn at a minus 185 price to win it all. If you take a look at Connecticut versus the field, which means you can pick Connecticut to win the national championship, or you can pick Purdue, Alabama, and or NC State. Now, the price points here for that taking the field aren't going to be as good as, let's just say, if you took Alabama and they win it at 13-1. You'd only cash in that ticket at a plus 146. If you were betting this strategy, and let's just say you had to do it here, going Connecticut versus the field, would it be Connecticut at a minus 184 price for you, Joe? Or would you say to yourself, I'd rather bet Purdue, Alabama, and NC State all together, or those three teams individually with the higher price points because maybe you have a feel that NC State can pull the upset, Alabama and or Purdue? Which way would you go with that wager?
Well, I think both favorites are favorites for a reason, and big favorites in that part. So I would only look to go any sort of combination of UConn, Purdue, followed by UConn winning the national championship. I just think that's what this is going to play out as. This is usually how it goes, right, Donnie? I mean, if we're expecting, and by the way, Purdue's a 1 seed, so it's not like it's far-fetched here. Great runs by Bama and North Carolina State. I do think it's going to be one hell of a final with UConn and Purdue. But at the same time, I think the last opportunity to get any value is right now looking at maybe NC State getting the points against Purdue, because I don't think they're beating Purdue. But I do think UConn covers their number against Alabama. And it was 10.5 at the open. It's now 11.5. And it would not shock me if this number starts to creep up closer to tip-off.
Yeah, sometimes we do get those high spreads on one of those games in the Final Four, Joe, but it's very rare that we're basically looking at two teams and two games in the Final Four here that are close to double digits, if not by game time, just might be both of them at double digits. We'll see how it plays out, but upsets certainly always can happen, and we have to remind ourselves it's the Final Four. It is a football stadium. It is in Arizona. No real home court advantage for any one of these ball clubs, and we'll see how it plays out, which another market here has to deal with awards, and that's the Final Four's most outstanding player. Zach Edey comes in right now at a plus 195 price. Newton and Klingon follow at plus 340 each. The one thing we can assess that if Purdue wins the national championship, it won't be because Braden Smith had, 60 points combined in the Final Four and the final games here. It's going to be Zach Edey was absolutely unstoppable. Therefore, the high price point here. But Newton and Klingon, obviously, along with UConn and Stephon Castle at 20-1, you're saying to yourself, and then also Cam Spencer at 5-1, a multitude of guys can win because there's such a deep team that anybody can go for 20 points on any given night. So betting Connecticut, yes, you're getting better prices, but there's no worse feeling in the world that you say, I'm going to bet Donovan Klingon to win MOP at plus 340, as opposed to just betting UConn to win the championship. Watch UConn cut down the nets, and Tristan Newton takes home MOP. If you were betting this market here, which way would you be going for UConn, Purdue, and also Sears at Alabama if they win at a 20-1 price?
Yeah, they won't win. But Edey is interesting because I think he's the one guy on there. Well, let me ask you this. Is there any situation that can come up where, because there's so many different guys on UConn, right, and any one of them are capable of winning that award for that game, but has Edey got enough goodwill now with people who vote on this, where if it's a close game and let's say, they lose by a bucket, but Edey drops 30 on, is there any way he could lose the next game, the championship, but still win this award?
I don't think so. I just think it's prescribed. There's the winning team
has it ever happened?
Win that award. I think they said it happened in 1983 with Akeem Olajuwon, I believe, won it when that year that NC State had that improbable Jim Valdano run. So I think there is precedent for it. But again, it's not as if it happened 4 years ago. It happened in 1983, 40 years ago, roughly. So we'll see if it happens. But you're right. There is an extenuating circumstance, but it just would feel odd. Like UConn wins the national championship. We're the best team all year. And it's like, oh, yeah, MOP is going to Edey. Like, that's why we have like the Naismith award. Like, hey, look. Doesn't matter if you win this tournament here. You're the best college basketball player. Here's your award. It would be interesting if that Final Four, again, Edey could go for 35 points on Saturday and another 35 on Monday and score 70 total points. The next closest guy was, let's just say, Klingon at 42 points. Then you would have an argument and possibly could happen. I just don't know if they would usurp the top champions here and not give them also the MOP award. But there is some fun betting markets here, Joe, on the FanDuel Sportsbook you can get down with if you're just not looking to take straight wagers. How about this? UConn to win both games by 10 or more points at a plus 215. You're saying to yourself, plus 10 or more points, you're crazy. Well, they're favored by 11.5 in game number one. And if they do take on Purdue, it is 5.5. But if they take on somebody else, it will be double digits. That's not a bad way to look because, quite frankly, UConn smokes everybody outside of the Big East, it feels like.
I agree there. Now, I don't know what the third one is interesting, too, with the UConn men and women both winning the title. And the women being in the Final Four there. I don't know what their odds are currently right now, but if I'm confident that UConn men are winning the title, then you just got to do some math to figure out if there's any value in that by including the UConn women here, but I don't know if they'll be how big of a dog or a favorite they would be if they eventually they win this first game there against Iowa and then move on. So that's an interesting one too, because I'm half of those parlays. I'm confident that UConn's winning it. Yes, I'm confident UConn's winning those games. I'm also confident they're covering the first game by more than 10 points, and then you got to figure. Is it worth me? Because that's a pretty better price than what you would get even if they were laying 5.5 against Purdue, and they would be the favorite against Purdue. What would that number be if it was North Carolina State, Donnie? How many are we talking?
Crazy.
UConn would be favored over NC State. The number would have to be astronomical.
Yeah, I think it was 15.5 is the look line. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So we could wind up with an unbelievable Monday, or we could wind up with oh boy, this looks like a snooze fest right here at this point. By the way, the women's tournament here, UConn is a 7-1 price right now to cut down the nets, and obviously they would have to beat Iowa to get into the final against South Carolina. But it's not a bad way to look because there might be some hedging opportunities because UConn is a very good women's basketball team. It's not going to be a absolutely crazy surprise if they can knock off Iowa, which then probably would put you in the money because you're thinking that UConn is already going to cut down the nets regardless of who they play. Might be a fun scenario to let it play out, and certainly for a little bit bigger money there. But also, yes, the NC State men and the NC State women to win the national championship, both of them there, 272 to 1. So that is a monster ticket that certainly can be up there if you're willing to bet on those type of markets. But I'm sure some of these fun specials at the FanDuel Sportsbook will continue throughout the week, and we'll certainly keep you updated if any of those lines changes. But right now, it looks like we are on a collision course for Monday night, and nobody's going to complain about the Purdue Boilermakers taking on the UConn Huskies for all the marbles here. And also, the women's Final Four Friday night and a championship game on Sunday. Love to see it, people. The Mouth in the South joins us next. Let's continue to hit the hardwood here, right here on the early line.
So I'm not sure Alabama is the team to knock them off from this second consecutive national championship chase. But what will be the key for the Crimson Tide if they can even cover a number?
That wing ball screen action, how you defend that is going to be a problem because of Donovan Clingan, it forces you to change so much what you do defensively if he's able to score inside.
Only on SportsGrid.
Talk all you want about how fat he is. No one can guard him. No one can stop him. He's a violent offender. He does whatever he wants in the low block and at the 10. He just does whatever he wants and scores at will, ad nauseum.
They're the Mike Tyson of college basketball. At some point, they're going to throw a haymaker. And when it connects, Pharrell, you're not getting up.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage Late
Sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Right back at it here on the early line. Hour number 2 certainly in full effect as we talk NCAA March Madness Final Four time this weekend for the men's, and then the championship will be on Monday night. Joe Ranieri, let's have some fun and get after this. And also, I do believe in just a few moments here, we are going to have the mouth in the South, Mark Zinno. Looks like he's ready to go to join us here to talk some Final Four action as we go. Mark, welcome in. I mean, how are we feeling? Final Four time, ready to make some money and get after it.
Yeah, gentlemen, great to be with you. It's going to be an interesting weekend, to say the least. And look, I don't know that either of these games are necessarily bettable or at least it makes sense to bet them straight, just taking points or laying the points here. I think there's other value propositions out there where there's probably smarter ways to attack it. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Let's start off here, Mark, at Alabama and Connecticut right now, because Alabama, very good team, very good conference in the SEC. But what Connecticut is doing right now in the tournament, just dismantling everybody they play and not even bringing their A game for the most part. Say, hey, you know what? Tonight we're not going to shoot so great from three-point range. Doesn't matter. We'll run you right off the court. The line with Alabama and Connecticut opened up at 11.5 and still sits at 11.5 at the FanDuel Sportsbook. Other outlets have already jumped up to 12 right now and a total of 160.5. When you see a line this big with two quality teams and primarily not a home game. We're not playing at Gamble Pavilion. We're not playing at TD Bank up there in Boston. You're out on the West Coast now. How do you handle a line that's this big here, Mark?
Odds makers are telling you you're going to have to pay a premium to bet on Connecticut. I mean, look, this game and the last two games in the Elite Eight and the Sweet 16, the numbers have been wrong. They've been flat out wrong. And odds makers are asking you to pay a premium on a team that's absolutely destroying teams. And this number is too high. I would have opened it up at 9.5 or 10. And I said that on Sunday night on In-Game Live when the line started to come out that this line was way too high. And so you're sitting here going, do you want to pay that premium on Connecticut? I think the answer is no. The way I would attack this, guys, is I take Alabama in the first half. If a 7 pops up, I know there are 6.5s out there. I'm going to wait as long as I can to see if a 7 pops up. But think about the game script, okay? Yes, Alabama could come out and nail a ton of threes. But remember, they did that against a Clemson defense when they hit 10 threes in the second half against a team that on the year allowed teams to hit 42% from three. I know the run they had in the tournament, it eventually caught up with them. That's not the case with Connecticut. This is a top 10 adjusted efficiency defense in the country. Clemson was not. So the game script here for Alabama to even try and win this game, let alone cover it, is to keep it close for the first 20 minutes. If they can't stay under 6 or 7 in the first 20 minutes, guess what? They're dead in the water anyway. I just don't know that there's a world where they're going to come out and hit 10 threes again second half against a team of this caliber and be able to do it. I'm not going to sweat this thing out for 40 minutes. If Alabama is not close within the first 20, they're not covering this game. Definitely not winning it either.
Yeah, in a football stadium, no less, where the sidelines are going to be totally different, which is why when I saw the total, I bet the under at 161.5 because I'm going, this is not going to be a shootout. You're talking about a UConn team, to your point there, that has been absolutely monstrous against top 10, top 25 offensive efficient teams here. They're holding them to 60 points, like 65 points, and they're not just going to let them fire away from three. So I thought the under was the best value in that game, but I'm seeing 12s popping up here, Zin. Where in the world is this going to land by the time we get the tip-off here? How high? What's too high in the point where you got to go, now I got to bet Alabama?
Well, I mean, I did that with San Diego State when it opened up at 9, and then it got to 10, and then it got to 11. We were 12, and I got back. This is insane. This is insane. Like, I can't believe. And yes, I fired on San Diego State. Guess what? They didn't cover the 12.5. So, again, I walked into the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight thinking the same thing that I'll think about the Final Four. Forget the number. Pick the winner and just lay the spread or take or bet the dog outright. I think that's really all that matters. Really all that matters. And speaking of betting the dog outright, let's just look at it this way, guys, and use some round numbers here. The smartest value play I think there is to take Alabama to win the whole thing at 16-1 and NC State to win the whole thing at 18-1. And if either one of them happens to sneak through, you are in the prime hedge situation. For argument's sake, I'd rather, if you put $10 on Alabama and $10 on NC State to win the whole thing, as opposed to putting $20 on either one of the dogs in the game itself, right? to cover a number that they're likely not going to cover, I'd rather hold on to a ticket with some value and try to hedge after the fact. I just think it's a smarter play from a money standpoint because I genuinely don't think either one of these dogs are winning. And so if that's the case, I don't want to be in a situation here where I lay this big number with the favorite and then get backdoored.
It's interesting points that we bring up here as we take a look, and I'm hoping that both of the favorites win from a viewing perspective on Monday night. I think it'd be unbelievable to watch Purdue take on UConn. But from a handicapping perspective, I know Joe started to allude to this. How do you approach these games? Because we take them out of the small gyms, out of the arenas, and put them in a football stadium. Sightlines are going to be different. Also give these teams, if they were playing hot, 4 to 5 to 6 days off before they even get to this moment to play on Saturday. From a handicapping technique, and if we look at Alabama and Connecticut, 160 and a half. That pace tells us they should be able to get there. But does that usually translate in these football stadiums? And to you, Mark, handicap a different style when we start to play in Final Four atmospheres with so many people, the pressure ratcheted up, and more importantly, the sightlines changing a lot?
I mean, I'd have to believe that when you get to this point, like, yes, it's something to acknowledge that they're in a football stadium and the sightlines are a little bit different. But, I mean, teams I think started arriving last night or arrived today. They'll be on that court several times before they tip it up on Saturday night. So it's not like they're going to be completely unfamiliar with it. And, you know, to a certain extent, once you start putting people around it, those sightlines sort of the background sort of fills it in a little bit. Remember, they left the college gymnasiums from the first and second round of 64 and round of 32 to the NBA stadiums, NBA arenas in the round of 16 and 8. So the teams that get to this point should be fairly used to it by now and should have a better grasp of sightlines and things of that nature. I mean, look, if you're going to have an off shooting night, I don't necessarily know that it's sightlines. I think it's just you're going to have an off shooting night. No, by the way, for NC State and Alabama, you're playing two really legitimate defensive teams in Purdue and UConn. So that may have more to do with it than anything else. And for Alabama, guys, it's streaky as streaky can be, right? Remember the first half against Clemson, they only made 6 threes. In the second half, they made 10. But they're going to keep shooting them. I mean, that's the one thing. If you're going to bet Alabama, you're just banking on the fact that 35 to 43s are going to be chucked up in this game. And if they can make close to 40% of them, they have a shot to stay in this thing.
Yeah. Well, does NC State have a shot to pull this out here? As that number seems to be coming back down now a little bit. 8.5s are even popping up.
Look, Purdue has been masterful at pulling away in the second half. I approach this game the same way. Give me NC State in the first half here and take I have a 5.5 out there. And take the points in the first half. NC State has been very scrappy to start. They've held the lead in all of their first halves, with the exception of against Duke. They were down by 6, and that's because they scored exactly 2 points over the final 9 minutes of the first. 7 points over the final 9 minutes. They had a scoring drought of 5 minutes where they only scored 2 points. So they only scored 7 points over the final 9 minutes of the first half. If they avoid that, they should be good. Now, look, I know everybody's all DJ Burns crazy, and he has been great to watch and a lot of fun to watch. But, you know, if DJ Burns is the big man, you know, Zach Edey is the bigger man. And now you're trying to knock down Jack and the Beanstalk here. And I don't think it's really possible. I think there's a huge edge to Zach Edey and Purdue when it comes to DJ Burns and what he's been able to do. It's just a different level of human that's going to be standing next to him that he hasn't faced yet. So I am a little bit worried there that there could be some inside dominance. But, you know, a lot of this, too, has been about NC State's defense, guys. You know, in the last 4 games, they have not allowed a team to shoot better than 38.7% from the field, and only one team shot better than 25% from 3, and that was Oakland with Gorky Park and, you know, the annoying kid who looked like Ray Zielinski. Yeah. So, you know, I think that that's really what this boils down to, is that NC State's defense should be able to limit Purdue's offense a little bit here, and we keep this thing close. I think there's an absolute game script where Purdue is only up by a bucket at half and then pulls away and covers this number. The second half games of the last 2 games, guys, they outscored their opponents by a combined 14 points. So if you're going to outscore by 7 in the second half, guess what? As long as you got a 1-bucket lead, you're covering this number. I mean, that's a big delta to overcome, giving up, you know, losing the second half by 7 points. So Purdue's been masterful at pulling away. I think they probably end up covering this number. It's a little bit thick for my blood, but that's why I like NC State in the first half.
Being dominant on the court and dominant in the odds market. That is UConn. If we take a look at the cut down the nets here at the FanDuel Sportsbook, Connecticut a minus 185 price, followed by Purdue at a plus 190, Alabama at 13-1, and NC State at a 20-1 price. Outside of Connecticut, if there was a team that you're going to take a flyer on, is it just so simple to say it's got to be Purdue that pulls the upset, or do you go that big ticket hunting with Alabama and or NC State here, Mark?
Again, I think from a value perspective, you take a flyer on Alabama, right? I mean, if Alabama gets there, and even if it is Purdue, guess what? For all Zach Edey's exploits as a great player, you can't block three-point shots standing underneath the basket, right? Like, that's just a genuine down to. So, if Alabama's threes get past Connecticut and pull off an upset, that, guys, I mean, in fairness, I don't know. I'm trying to think of an upset as big that I've seen in my lifetime, given what Connecticut has done. If Alabama can pull this thing off here, it would be quite impressive, to say the least. But that's probably the only flyer I'd really look at. I don't know that NC State – I think Alabama's a better shot against UConn than NC State does against Purdue, believe it or not. But, again, both of those tickets, to take them both for a small amount, to get one winner out of the two of them, you're in prime hedge situation. Make some money out of it.
You could take a look at some of the other markets to play on, which would be taking the field against UConn, some interesting matchups there, and also the MOP, most outstanding player, which currently has Zach Edey as the favorite at a plus 195 price. Not because we think Purdue is going to cut down the nets, but if Purdue wins, that's the clear focus would be on Zach Edey. Let's take a look at the Mouth and the South's opinion of the Major League Baseball season. Coming up next right here on the Early Line.
So I'm not sure Alabama is the team to knock them off from this second consecutive national championship chase. But what will be the key for the Crimson Tide if they can even cover a number?
That wing ball screen action, how you defend that is going to be a problem because of Donovan Clingan, it forces you to change so much what you do defensively if he's able to score inside.
Only on SportsGrid.
Talk all you want about how fat he is. No one can guard him. No one can stop him. He's a violent offender. He does whatever he wants in the low block and at the 10. He just does whatever he wants and scores at will, ad nauseum.
They're the Mike Tyson of college basketball. At some point, they're going to throw a haymaker. And when it connects, Pharrell, you're not getting up.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York team has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The Early Line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Major League Baseball officially on deck now as we take a look at what happened last night, take a look at what we think is going to happen in the future, and also some games to handicap tonight. I'm Donnie Rightside along with Joe Ranieri in the Mouth in the South. Mark Zinno is here to join us to talk a little Major League Baseball. So let's get it started. Yesterday, perfection was in the air for the New York Yankees, Mark, a 5-0 start to the Major League Baseball season. Nestor Cortez, who struggled on opening day, didn't pick up the loss, but was going to get a crack at game number 2 for him in the 2024 season. Going up against Zach Allen, one of the better pitchers in the National League, and he's been electric throughout his career at home. No surprise last night. Zach Allen moves to 2-0 on the season after pitching 6 innings, giving up no earned runs and 6 strikeouts. Nestor Cortez giving up 3 runs right away in the first inning, and away the Diamondbacks went on a 7-0 victory last night. Yanks down to defeat to the Diamondbacks there, Mark.
Yeah, shocker. The Yankees weren't going 162-0. Damn. There goes that future. But, again, look, I said it very simply to my kids as I was walking them to bed last night, and they saw it was 3-0. And they said, Dad, what happened? I go, Nestor stinks. He ain't that nasty. And that's really what it boils down to. I played the Diamondbacks first 5 last night just because the Yankees bullpen pitches really well. And if it was a tight game, I didn't want to have to chase with the Diamondbacks getting a late run. And the Yankees have started this season 4th in Major League Baseball in scoring runs in the 7th inning or later. So they've been doing a lot of late scoring and coming from behind. So I thought it was a smarter play. But Zach Allen at home is still a thing, guys. He pitches really well there. Now, again, he had a couple of base runners on here and there, which made you a little bit nervous and managed to get some double play balls and get out of it. But all things considered, look, the Yankees right now love the 5-0 start. Obviously, again, they weren't going to win every single one of them. But, this is a team that to start the season has got some timely hitting and some decent pitching. I'm still very worried about it. Yeah, I mean, you guys know I've been very guardedly, I don't even say optimistic. I've just been guarded about the Yankees' prospects for a World Series. That doesn't mean they're not going to win 90 games. It doesn't mean they're not going to be competitive every night. Of course they are. They have a lot of talent, but, again, having a lot of talent, winning a World Series are 2 different things. So, I don't know if they'll start to, come back very quickly. Let's see what happens. A lot of this will depend on every night the starting pitcher that they put out there. And without Garrett Cole in the lineup for the first 2 months, you're going to get a whole bunch of guys there who probably shouldn't be starting. I mean, they trotted Lucas Gill out there. I mean, there's a large contingent of Yankee fans who couldn't pick Lucas Gill out of a police lineup, let alone know what he was wearing a Yankee uniform in Yankee Stadium. So, again, this is a team that I think I worry about their starting pitching day to day. If they can score runs. And, oh, by the way, it's kind of being done with smoke and mirrors because Soto and Oswaldo Cabrera are the only guys really hitting the ball. It's not like Judge and Stanton are tearing the cover off the ball here in this thing. Soto is going bonkers, and a couple other guys are getting some timely hits. But the boppers in the lineup, Rizzo and Stanton and Judge, haven't really come around yet.
Yeah. Is Verdugo on the team? I thought he was. Maybe not. Yeah. He's getting paid, but he's I haven't seen him on the base pass yet, so that's interesting as well there. And Nasty Nestor has got to go. Like this rotation, I think it's only going to get worse from here because they got to go up against Merrill Kelly today. And, Cole was kind of the stopgap. You knew every 5th game, we've got a chance to win no matter what, whether we hit or we don't have that with the Yankees right now at all. I don't know who that guy is. It isn't Cortez, that's for sure.
No, and here's the problem, too, for a bullpen that was so good last year because you did get at least every 5th day a guy who's going to go 7 or 8 innings, or at least get into the 8th. You don't have that. And here's the danger, and this is just something to put in the back of your mind, guys, as the season goes along. When the Yankees' bullpen usage rate is the highest in Major League Baseball by the time we get to Memorial Day because they're quickly going at 4 1/3 or even 5 innings, and their bullpen's got to go 4 innings every night, guess what? Once August turns around, those dudes' arms are going to start to go south. And when games matter, they're not going to have any juice left in the tank. So it's just something to put in the back of your mind to watch how this season unfolds and the bullpen usage rate that the Yankees are going to have to use to keep winning ball games. Because, again, without their offense generating 6 or 7 runs, guess what? They're not going to have the luxury of leaving that starter in for an extra 2 or 3 outs that are critical outs. You're going to have to go to high-leverage situations, high-leverage relievers, and those guys' arms are going to get burned out pretty quickly. So that's why, again, I'm not sitting here, like some of my colleagues and Yankee fans talking about the resurrection of the Yankees and everything. Let's pump the brakes here. You played 5 games. You happen to win them all. Remember, you trailed in 4 of them after 6 innings. So settle down here a little bit before we start popping champagne bottles in April.
Popping champagne bottles means you're at least making it through a couple rounds of the playoffs and possibly into the World Series. You take a look at the American League and the odds currently to win the pennant. Still have the Houston Astros at a plus 360 price, followed by the New York Yankees at a plus 450 price, and the Rangers, Orioles, and Mariners as follows here. Are we panicked at all? And I know it's 162 here, but the Houston Astros open up the season not looking very good. The Yankees looking very good. Are we surprised by the odds difference here of roughly $1 between the Astros and the Yankees, or settle down? Everything's going to be just fine. It'll work its way out here, Mark.
Listen, I say settle down, but I also kind of say that in the vein that maybe Houston keeps losing and that number gets a little bit fatter that you can actually jump on it, right? Like, I mean, you have to think about it logically here. If Houston struggles through the month of April and you get them at a 4 or 5 to 1 price, or even closer to 6 to 1, why would you not jump on them as a team that has the experience and the talent and the pitching to get all the way through, get back, and get to the postseason? They ain't got to win the division, right? They just got to get to the playoffs, and they're likely still going to do that and have a chance to win the American League once they get there. So, from a value perspective, again, I think you look and you wait and say, maybe that Houston number will come down a little bit. Maybe that's a number you can jump on. I still think that there's a lot of value in some of these other AL teams. Toronto, let's see if they can get off to a hot start. And obviously, Baltimore. I still can't understand why Baltimore is being priced like a team that isn't all that good when they are all that good.
Yeah, well, it's interesting with Houston and Toronto back at it again today here after not a whole lot of offense last night either. They had just enough offense to actually win that game, Toronto, after being no-hit the night before. And yet, here they go. Bassett on the mound, I believe, for Toronto here. Bassett on the road is always interesting. But I am still shocked with the inability of this Toronto, of all the teams to get no hit this early. Toronto was not a team I would have had on the bingo card here, Zin. I mean, what do we do in this rubber match?
Well, look, I got to tell you guys, I love the Astros today. Let's just get you some Chris Bassett splits from last year at home and on the road. Home ERA 2.86, road ERA 4.5. Home whip 0.9, road rip 1.4. He's given up 19 home runs and 16 road starts. The opposing batting average jumps from 196 at home to 277 on the road. Guys, it's like almost 90 points, 80, 90 points higher on the road here. Astros starting to feel a little bit of the pressure here after the no-hitter. Hey, if we don't throw a no-hitter, we can't win, right? Like, jokingly, that's the joke around the Houston clubhouse. But so Bassett on the road, no bueno. I'll take Christian Javier, although he's been very, susceptible to giving up a ton of runs and starts like he did last year. But he had a very good first outing. So maybe look at the over, too, at 8.5. Not a bad way to go for the over in this game. But I think Astros first 5, Astros money line is where I'll look.
Yeah, and you take a look at last night. That should have been an easy win for Houston. So, well, how so? It was a 2-1 final. Josh Hader comes in. He's designed to come in and just blow the doors off the batters 1, 2, 3. He's 0-2 already to start this early season. We'll see how that checks in a little bit later. But let's take a look at a game right off the top today at the Trop. And that's 9:13, 9:14 on the rotation. 1 o'clock start, Texas and Tampa Bay. Eovaldi versus Savali. This line opened up overnight as a minus 126 favorite towards the home team here, the Rays, at FanDuel. Now we take a look at a minus 120 price here as it lines up live with a total listed at 8. Texas and Tampa, 1 o'clock afternoon baseball today.
Yeah, both of these guys had a pretty good first start on the way out, even though Eovaldi didn't get the win. It was one of those starts where it was effective, and these guys haven't put a lot of guys on, right? They only gave up 4 hits each, and they only gave up 1 walk, and so you're talking about a sub-1 whip in the first one here, but Tampa Bay for them, what is their offense going to look like this year, while they're missing some key players and while they're missing some key bats in the lineup? Obviously, the situation going on, and we'll wait and see if they can get him back in the lineup. But, I think when it comes down to it here, Texas's offense still should be what drives the train for them. If they're going to score runs, they should be okay. And I think in general, when it comes down to it, Texas right now is a team that I want to play on and continue to play on their overs. Last year they were a great over team. I think you get a little bit of a depressed total here with this number. I think both of these teams can score runs despite the fact that they got decent starters. And Savali's always been a little bit of a an up and down kind of guy, right? He's got some good starts and some bad starts he had in Cleveland last year, but it'll be interesting to see how the rest of this game goes and the rest of this series goes today. But when you get that 8, it's almost begging me to take an over just because I can land on an 8 and push still.
The Dodgers are winning bullpen games. I don't know how. What do we do? Yet they're 3-2, which is hilarious. So what do we do with this final game here against the Giants?
I mean, look, the Dodgers, much similar to UConn, they're being priced like they're already won the National League, right? Like, you're just going to get insane money lines across the board that are absolutely unbettable. And even at that, your first fives, if you want to cut them in half, given the money line is minus 240, your first fives are still going to be minus 150, minus 160, right? Like, it's just it's unbettable. And I think what you have to do with the Dodgers is look for a teammate or a friend to money line parlay with them that you can believe can get a W, or you have to be willing to just swallow the risk and make a much smaller bet when it comes to the juice that you're going to pay, because the Dodgers are not going to be a profitable team this year, unless, of course, you want to lay the 1.5. Now, they were great at it last year, but historically, what people will tell you that minus 1.5 is not a favorable way to make money when betting baseball over the long haul. So it's very, very tough to bet the Dodgers at this point in time. You probably got to look to either totals with them, right, because they're going to go over because they're going to score, or try to find situations where they're playing high-level pitchers that are going to bring that money line price down to something a little bit more manageable.
Mark, I always love to take a look at the MVP markets, obviously before the season, but then using that first 2 to 3 weeks, we get some movement based on hot starts. Juan Soto's been tremendous here for the Yankees so far. He's the favorite right now at the FanDuel Sportsbook to win MVP at a plus 370 price. Second place is Aaron Judge, who's been abysmal so far, but yet we wait for the hitting weather in the small ballpark when they get back to the Bronx to launch home runs into the seats, followed by Seager, Rodriguez, Alvarez, but also my guy before the season, who I thought was getting a little bit kicked over, was Mike Trout at an 18-1 price now coming up there. Come on, man. Trouty for MVP. Mark, make it happen.
Well, it's interesting you say that because it's absolutely worth playing on Mike Trout. Just simply because of the start that he had. Look, he's got the MVP potential every single year. The question is, are you lighting that on fire with his first trip to the IL? When he's going to be out for what they say is a 7-day IL, which turns into the 14-day IL, which turns into the 30-day IL, and next thing you know that you've wasted money. But the one guy I thought you were going to say, your guy was DRS, was Bobby Witt. I mean, tearing the cover off the ball to start the season. Now, what hurts him? He plays in Kansas City, and no voter is going to vote for anybody in Kansas City because Kansas City's probably, unless they pull off, something semi-miraculous and win the American League Central. But Bobby Witt is batting over 500 and over 1,200 to start the year. I think there's a ton of value on Julio Rodriguez, Bobby Witt, Mike Trout. I think those are the spots you throw a small shekel on now at these big numbers and hope that they can continue all the way through Memorial Day when the market really starts to settle in a little bit more.
Look at that. Covered college basketball along with some Major League Baseball action. That's what Mark Zinno does, the mouth in the South, right here at the Sports Grid Network. Joe and Donnie will continue on as we take a look at women's college basketball invading the public next.
So I'm not sure Alabama is the team to knock them off from this second consecutive national championship chase. But what will be the key for the Crimson Tide if they can even cover a number?
That wing ball screen action, how you defend that is going to be a problem because Donovan Clingan forces you to change so much what you do defensively if he's able to score inside.
Only on SportsGrid.
Talk all you want about how fat he is. No one can guard him. No one can stop him. He's a violent offender. He does whatever he wants in the low block and at the 10. He just does whatever he wants and scores at will, ad nauseum.
They're the Mike Tyson of college basketball. At some point, they're going to throw a haymaker. And when it connects, Pharrell, you're not getting up.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Fading the public here is what we do each and every day at the end of hour number 2. We want to reach out to the people and let them know, like, yes, you have a say in this show and you can be heard. It's Donnie Rightside and Joe Ranieri. You hear a lot about us over these 3 hours, but I love when the public comes into play. And today we take a look at the women's NCAA tournament. So again, at SportsGrid TV, our account here on X, we ask you, the people, to vote and give you 4 options. The question today: who will win the women's NCAA tournament? Of course, there's 4 options: South Carolina, Iowa, UConn, and NC State. In that order, South Carolina the favorite at a minus 200 price, Iowa plus 300, UConn 7-1, and NC State at a 12-1. My vote went to Iowa, and 39% of the voters did agree with me. But slightly ahead of Iowa is South Carolina, the heavy favorite at minus 200, coming in at roughly 41% of the vote. NC State brings up the rear at 6.3% here. In this vote here, Joe Ranieri, at SportsGrid TV, where did you go with your vote?
I went to, of course, Old Reliable, and I'm going to go with UConn to get it done here, because I do think we've got a pretty good opportunity to go UConn in the men and women's tournament here, which is not something that's easily done. Although it's tough to go against Caitlin Clark, I don't think she's ever beaten UConn, if I'm not mistaken, in her career to this point. So, and they also have a pretty good player too in Becker. So it should be one of the best games we're going to get actually remaining.
2 superstars are going to tee it up on that one side of the Final Four. It's Caitlin Clark for Iowa and then Paige Beckers from UConn, which does guarantee us at least one of those will move on, presumptively, playing South Carolina. So you have the ultimate team, and then you're going to have somebody who's going to be just getting after saying, hey, man, I got to get 35-plus points in this game to keep my team around. So it should be a lot of fun to watch you play out. But certainly, Dawn Staley's South Carolina Gamecocks, clearly the class of the NCAA this year. 2 more wins will get them a perfect season to cut down the nets. We'll see if they can do that. Hour number 3 is coming up right here on the early line. Joe Ranieri and Donnie Rightside. We got you covered. We'll be back in just about a minute.
smarter to be on SportsGrid.